Why, hello there! How are you today? Awesome Soul here, and in today's video, based off of a fair amount of requests I've gotten over the years, I will be doing a build video. Though, not just any old build video. This is kind of my way of giving insight to you guys on how I tend to build my robots. Sort of giving a, I guess, inside look at what methods I use to create, well, my creations. So, first things first, we need to know what exactly we are going to build. So, open up the inventory, and we need to start out by picking our weaponry. Or, I guess, movement, but I kind of already have that planned. As you know, I do enjoy my mechs, and that's kind of what I'm known for around here. So, I think it's the best idea to go ahead and start with a sprinter mech, at least for this video. Don't know if we'll be doing more, but we'll see. So, I think what we will be doing here is kind of going for an asymmetrical-ish build. Gonna have a rail impaler, going to have a ion distorter, and then possibly some small lasers, but not sure. And then also we are going to strap in a weapon energy module. And I think that is pretty much golden. So, grab ourselves some of the nice fancy legs here. Now we come to the first hurdle. How far do we want the legs to be spaced? Do we want them to be very narrow, and that will limit our creativity when it comes to the lower torso? Or we can widen them a little bit, and that will give us a lot more ability to detail. We could go for even wider, but honestly, I've never gone that wide before. So let's put them at this range. That way I can show you kind of how the detailing goes when it comes to sort of the underside. I guess the counterweight, we can call it. Plus, we can also strap in the rod long, which is always good because it has more health than the rod short. And I do this to sort of strengthen the connection. Though you do have to turn mirror mode off for that. So this is basically to keep the legs alive a little bit longer. Usually you'll luck out, and if you lose all your cubes around here, you might still have the rod connecting this leg to that leg. It's happened to me a few times, and it definitely comes in handy quite a bit. So, I will do some basic filling out, and then I will join you once more. Alright, so we've got the basic outline here, as you can see. Kind of got some nice detailing, and what I like to do as well is use these curved edges along with the flat edges just to kind of add some more texture, as opposed to just if I used the flat equivalent, as we can see here, edge right there. A little bit boring, wouldn't you agree? As opposed to that. I don't know, it adds a bit more character. But the other thing that I do want to get into is more rod forcing. Very important with your legs, especially if you're going for my style of build, where it's a lot more detailed and less, I guess, try-hardy functional, if that makes sense. You'll definitely need some rods to reinforce your build. So you can either place them here like this, or you can go here like this. If you do this method, it's going to be sticking out, and it's going to be kind of exposed, letting people pick it off a little bit more easily. So what I like to do, tuck it in as nice as possible, and then grab this, so you go like that. So this way, if you have a cube in the middle, these faces aren't connecting. So the damage has to route a little bit further to get from this rod to that rod, just so they're going to stay around a whole lot longer. Anyways, though, I will continue along with the underside of the robot and then continue along with the voiceover. Alright, real quick, I do want to get into something. It's something I've shown off in a few of my bot review videos, but if you somehow have missed those, this will come in handy quite a bit. So, this method, as you can see, we can actually place it here. So grab yourself a health edge slope, and you can indeed fit them underneath the rods. So you can either place them like so, or like so. Basically, it's which side do you want to give a little bit more connection to. And then what I also like to do is do this and then have it facing upwards like that. Of course, you can reverse these. Either way, it's up to you. Anyways, back to the undercarriage. Alright, and there we go. As you saw from watching the clip, it is kind of a bit of trial and error. It's kind of just throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks, so to say. You know, you'll try something, and then you'll remove it, delete it, quickly come up with something else, and just kind of basically go with the flow. Just keep trying and testing things. What also helps is getting a general shape, and then continuing on from there. Speaking of continuing on from there, I think we do need to strengthen the upper side a little bit. So let's do just that. And as usual, we're going to basically stick with the same thing. Just kind of trial and error, this whole thing. I'd say that is pretty solid, although additionally what I could do is perhaps do something like so. Actually, yeah, I like that a little. Yeah, I like that a lot better. Let's go with that one. Though I have been kind of throwing these in here, so what I could do is that perhaps? Yeah, no, let's go with that, sure. And we kind of have to do the same for the backside. Of course, you don't have to go with the same method. You could go with something similar, but for this time, I think we will go with the same method as we've done on the front. Something like so, and then grab our corner here, and like that. I'd say that's a pretty solid base to go off of, going to give us a fair amount of health boost as well. Of course though, this undercarriage, or counterweight as I've referred it to, is mainly just for the health boost. Doesn't really serve much functional purpose. It's also there for looks as well. Anyways, from here I will go back into hardcore build mode and rejoin you once I have something else that I want to highlight. And there we have it. So we have beefed up this section a little bit more, starting to look more like the typical chassis that you know and love on the channel. Now we come to this part, which is pretty damn important. You want to, just like how we've done under there, maximize your rod space. As you can see here, you can't really fit this cube in. But what you can do, grab one of these, and now you can, while also getting that much needed health boost. Likewise, you can continue it up there, and because we've already done this section, there is no connective face here, nor here, so damage is not going to transfer all the way like that. Now, just to kind of give a little bit of a basic example here, I might come back and change this afterwards, but you can do the exact same thing on the outside. So if we try full cube, not going to work. Got to get one of these rounded inners, or one of the regular inners would also work as well. Or edge, rather. It is edge, right? Edge, yes. I know my blocks, don't you worry. Anyways, from here, I will go back into build mode and continue along until we've gotten to another point where I would like to share some information with you. Okay, so the next thing that I normally do on these kind of builds is sort of one that's more aesthetic than actually functional. However, I think it is still pretty important if you want to have a good looking mech. Again though, not really going to add a whole lot other than maybe some extra health boost, but that's about it. So, we're going to bring this out to about here, and then possibly widen it about to there. From there, grab these, put it in like that, and then bring this in like that. Now, this is a little bit wide, but that's okay. And then usually I will paint this thing gray. Basically anything that's kind of got some sort of functionality to it, like vents, or, and of course I put functionality in quotations, but vents and the rotating platforms on my mechs, those will be in gray, as well as some random highlighting in gray as well. So there we go, we have our rotating platform as most mechs tend to do, at least in other mech games. Of course, rotating platforms don't exist in this game, but hey, a man can dream, can't he? Anyway, from here, we will go back to hardcore build mode, and I will rejoin you once I have something else to share. Alright, so here's one more thing that you could do if you wanted to. So, as we've stated before, we've got these here connected to the rods below. So damage is not going to route directly from here to here, but it will route up into here and then go out to there. Or what you could do is go with the full cube, but then it's going to go from here to here to here and then go back onto that side or to that side. You could go with something like this, or you could go with something like this. And that's going to route the damage out to here, and it will also route the damage out to that side as well. You could also mount them up like that, meaning that the damage has to go out from the rod to here, and then it will go up into the chassis and not down into that, or at least not down as fast. It's really up to you, but of course you are sacrificing a little bit of structural integrity. Just to make things simple on me, I think I will just go with the full cubes, at least for this time. Maybe next time I might change it. Actually, you know what? Let's try this method. Sure. Why not? Let's see what this does. Anyways, back to building. Alright, now comes the important part, the cockpit. But before I do get into that, something I kind of forgot to mention, it is somewhat optional if you wanted to have a rod running through the center of your robot like this. For extra structural integrity, that is another option you could do as well. You're kind of connecting it to this area down here, but that is only if you don't have the rod running through the center of the legs. So if you do have the center rod, your option is basically to go in this area here, which is kind of a prime target anyways, but it's really up to you. What you do need to do is play around with your design. Don't be afraid to tweak it and add more rods or take away rods just to see what things work for you. But yes, now for the cockpit. Gonna try and go with something I don't normally do, which is sort of a, I guess, typical cockpit, shall we say? Something along these lines here. On second thought, I'm not really digging this, to be quite frank. We could go with that. It's not terrible. Yeah, it's not terrible, actually. Again, you just kind of have to sit and play around with things. Or things, rather. It's all up to you whether or not you want to scrap something or continue along with the path you were at. Again, do not be afraid to scrap something. Even if it is a fair amount of work you've put into it, just completely scrap it if it's not working for you. The cockpits always give me the hardest time because I've kind of got this style in my mind. I'm like, alright, I need to go with this style. This is how you make these kind of mechs. And then, I don't know, I kind of psych myself out, I guess. Maybe something like that could work, perhaps, possibly. I don't really know at this point. I think it is kind of coming together, though. I'm kind of digging that. So let's keep with this style and stick in a nice one of these curves, as I've kind of been opting to do for this build. So that kind of works there. Although additionally, what we could do is try and make the neck not as oddly bulky. At least when you're looking at it front on. Yeah, I think that works. Something like that. So, once we're done with the front, I will continue on and come back to you guys. So, there we have it. Here is our cockpit, and honestly, I am actually rather pleased with how it turned out. I'm definitely glad I went for something kind of different compared to what I normally do. Now, as you know, this is my very typical jet fighter style upper torso, where it's very long as opposed to very tall or wide. I kind of like that because it keeps the front profile a lot more narrow, I guess, and you also have to chew through a lot more blocks if you are facing the enemy in order to actually get to anything connected behind there. But yes, now we come to something that is also kind of important, and that would be the hover blades. So, for starters, I think I will attach one in this section back here. Now what this is going to do is let our bot be a lot more nimble, especially when it comes to jumping. As well, it gives us a little bit of backup. Now, what you want to do, if you have only one, hoverblade, that is. If you have only one hoverblade, you want to mount it back here on this side. That way, like I was saying, when you're facing the front of the bot, it has to chew through all of these cubes before it gets to this thing. And then it will actually start hitting this, and of course, this has a much higher health cube, or health pool, rather, than the health cube that it is attached to. So you always want to keep that in mind. But if you do have two, what is nice is alternating their connection points. So you have one that is going to be protected if somebody's firing at you from the back. Of course, they can take this cube out, but if you have it mounted from here and you're being hit from behind, then they will chew through these cubes and then start to hit this, as opposed to just take out the cube right away. What we can also do is, I think, perhaps like that, maybe? No. Put it like that, or like this. Now, you don't have to go with the largest ones. This is just kind of an example I've been using. I'm also kind of considering lowering their size myself. Though you do have to remember, if you go lower, you will get less health boost, or speed boost rather, and less overall health. But it does help a fair bit with the size. See, what I can do now is actually fit that in one block closer. Actually, could I go even closer if I went with, say, this one? No. Although I could actually... Decisions. Because you do want to keep your size down. That's also another thing you do need. Yeah, let's go with that and that. Just like this. And that can fit in like so. And then you always got to remember the building size, or building box rather, is not exactly what it seems for most parts. So try and play around. See, like that, we could not get the edge there, but we could get the sloped edge. So just keep playing around, try and fit in as many things as humanly possible. But anyways, I will continue on and meet you guys when I'm done. Alright, so there we have it. Here is our little hover chamber, I guess we can say. Now, you don't have to go with just a single hover or two hovers. You can go with as many hovers as you feel comfortable with fitting onto your robot. Now, they are very good, like I was saying, for backup. If you lose your legs, you will still be able to move at least somewhat. Now, another thing that is more so for aesthetical purposes than actual functional purposes is I like to create what's kind of, I guess we can call the hover chamber, for a lack of a better term. And this is exactly what it sounds like. It's just a way of adding a bit more visual flair to your robot by letting you see inside where your hovers are actually housed. So I've kind of gone for a pretty well armored one. The theory here is it's like a air intake, kind of, if that makes any sense for you. But yeah, I think that looks good. You will see it when you're playing, but if you rotated it, if you rotate your camera this way, or if you're facing someone, they can't really see it. So they don't really know where your hovers are. It's kind of nice to hide them still, but keep a bit of visual flair. I mean, if you don't look good, what's the point of playing? Am I right? But yes, I will continue on, and I think what we'll do next is try and figure out a way of getting our module mounted inside. So there we have it. As you saw, this was a pretty simple mounting method. You could go with something a little bit more extreme. What I also would recommend is doing some extra padding underneath there. What I kind of decided to do is hook this up to that cube, just because this cube here is holding on to this hover. So it kind of gives it a little bit more protection, I guess we can say. Though you do have to remember, like I was saying, all the connection points rather, besides this one, are underneath here. So seeing as it's just a simple, if I can English properly, line of cubes, you're definitely going to want to armor that up. Additionally, you could raise it up higher, but that would cause problems with it sticking out the top. It all depends on how high up of a frame you want to go. But anyways, going on, we will, from here, go to, I think the weapon mounts would probably be our best bet. Definitely coming along pretty well, if I do say so myself. Alright, so I kind of had a thought while building, actually. Like I was saying earlier, never a bad thing to sort of go back and scrap any ideas you might have. So, this thing, probably not the best here. So let's take out all of these cubes, just widen it up, and mount it like this. But obviously have this connection point facing downward like so. This way, we're still doing the same plan I had before, where the connection point is sort of protecting that thing there, but now it's not connected to this underside. So all those connection points on the lower half of the module are getting a lot more use. But yes, now we can actually go back and do what we were doing before. As you saw, trying to maximize our cube placement potential. Alright, so our back end is looking incredibly boxy at this point, but that's okay, because we definitely are not done either. So, now we come to the weapon mounting point of our build. What I generally like to do is kind of lay out where you want your weapons to go. So, I think probably this area isn't such a bad idea. So I bring it out as far as possible, just like that, and what this is doing is giving us an idea of how far out we actually need to bring our chassis if we want to make sure there's no collision issues. So we can bring it in one more. Can we do another one? No, we can't. So you can either go up by one or a couple extra. I usually just add some extra and then some just to see which method will work best. Still no, still no, still no, and still, well, still yes, actually. Is this going to be a little bit too high for the build? I think that is going into the ridiculous territory. So I think we'll do this. Actually, could we just go with that? Because I think if we leave it fairly low, will that be okay like this? Actually, that's looking pretty good. It's also keeping the profile low as well, which I quite like. So, now, this is an asymmetrical build. I don't generally do these kind of things, but you do want to keep it as symmetrical as possible, just so your camera isn't a little bit wonky there. Alright, so we are looking pretty solid, I would say, as far as primary weapons go. I might end up doing some small lasers, perhaps, just as kind of backup. I mean, having large weapons is nice and all, but with them being so large, they are fairly simple to pick off. But for now, I will just kind of armor up the whole chassis and make it look a bit more uniform. Oh, but real quick, before I actually get into that, something that is very important, back to rod forcing. So, we can go with a 3x3, or a 3 long rather, or if you have your weapons spaced even farther apart, you could go with a 5 long. But I can't do that in my case because that would end up having both rods connected to a single cube, being this one here. Let's rotate that back to where it needs to be. There we are. So, with that, I will now actually continue on. Okay, so we've got a fairly beefy looking shoulder set, and unfortunately it is asymmetrical, so we kind of have to accommodate for these mounting points as well as these mounting points. Now I might come back here and edit these a little bit just to make this side look slightly different. Perhaps what I could do is turn off symmetry mode and just make them indented like that. Like so, and then, oh, I could do the cones actually. But would this be too round? I don't know. It's really, like I've been saying throughout the whole video, kind of my building method in a nutshell. Trial and error. See what sticks. Yeah, that's not bad actually. I might come back and change some things again, but for now, that will do it. As far as at least the mounts go. But, like I was saying, we have some very beefy looking shoulder pads, but everything else is looking kind of uniform, especially along the sides here. So what I will be doing now is just kind of tweaking that and changing it, just to make it look a bit less plain and boring, also to make it match up with this section here. Alright, so just checking back in, just to kind of give a quick overview of what I've done. So I've sloped this out, and instead of just continuing the slope down, I've kind of added this little spike here. Because originally I thought maybe just continue it like this, but then that's kind of boring. It leaves all of this dead, unused space up there. So, just go with this. And do we have one of the pieces I'm looking for? Yep, just pick block. Very, very, very handy to have that tool. So here, I could have gone with something like that, but that too is also rather boring because this just continues along like that. And then, I don't know, it just doesn't look as good from the front. So if we take that away, now it adds a bit more pizzazz to it. It'll look better once we're actually colored and everything's not blindingly bright white. But for now, I'll keep it as is because I don't really know the color scheme I'm going for just yet. And the other thing I do want to touch on is the rotating platform. Or, again, in air quotes. I did have this here because I kind of wanted more structural integrity. And then I took it away and I'm like, you know what? That is kind of needed. I mean, at a certain point, you do need to take into account actual functionality. Aesthetics are nice, but functionality and, you know, not dying easily on the battlefield is also good as well. So what we could do here is have it like this. That way, this cube is going to connect to that one as well. Or we could go with this, which does look a little bit better, but it's not actually connected to that cube there. So really, it's up to you. Just kind of play around. If you're okay with dying a teeny bit faster, or I guess a possibility of dying a little bit faster, then go with something like that. Again, it's kind of a give and take of how much you want to sacrifice for aesthetic purposes. Alright, so here we are with our side, or at least front side, done. There's still the back side shaping we do need to do as well. the last thing you probably saw me do was change this cube over to this cube here. Now I did that just so it kind of connects a bit better. You see how this one here goes at an angle to follow along with this one, but if we have this back here, then it just leaves that space open, and it just kind of looks weird, like it's floating, basically, but it seems like this is a fancy pattern that should be held up by something. So I opted to go with that cube there. And I think it looks a lot better, to be quite frank. Anyways, just a last quick little overview of what we've done so far and what we need to do still. So coming to the back here, it's looking pretty plain. We do need to fix this up. And then the top section, we're also going to tweak a little bit, but I don't know, I might open this up and expose the module, but we'll see. And as the build goes on, I'm also considering actually adding those lasers. I think that's probably a good idea. Alright, so here we are, starting to look a little bit more solid back here. What I opted to do is indent this. Now the reason I did that is because I wanted to differentiate the shoulders from the back. Because if it was just going to be flat like that, then you're just kind of looking at one solid object. It's not anything different. Like, you can't really tell where the shoulder begins and the back ends, or vice versa. And that's another thing I do want to touch on. Sort of keeping your eyes busy when you're looking at a build, or really anything. You don't want to be looking at a flat surface for too long. See, like I was saying back in this section here, that's too flat. It's a little bit boring. I mean, it does have a nice sort of check mark, zigzag kind of shape to it, but adding this adds a lot more flair to it, at least I feel. That's also what I've done down here. You won't really see too many flat surfaces anywhere on this build. I guess the flattest thing is probably here, but I might come back to that. It's also a little bit flat there. I don't know, it's kind of understandable why it's flat, because it needs to be covered here, and you can't really do too much with the shapes we have currently. Cough cough, free jam, more cube shapes please. But yes, the last part we do need to kind of touch on before coming all the way to the back here is this upper section. Now, like I was alluding to before, we can open this up and reveal the nice juicy module that's hidden within. Now, again, this is trading aesthetics for functionality. Which do you prefer in your build? If you're new to the game and are kind of dying a little bit too often, I'd go for functionality over looks. But if you like to, I guess, give yourself a challenge where you're not using the best bot ever, but you're kind of looking cool while kicking ass, then I'd go for some looks over anything else. So just kind of opening this up here. The way I've built this is kind of limiting, at least somewhat. But what we can do is go with that, limiting in the fact that I've kind of got these curved up pieces like this. So really the only way we're going to be looking at this is from this cube right here. That's what I was getting at. So there we are, something like that, I'd say, is looking pretty good. What we could also do is add that there. It does add a little bit more protection from the front, slightly, and it adds to your total health cubes. Additionally, we could also get that onto it just for, I guess, some extra bonus looks, but not really all that important. We could add this and that to it. That's looking a bit tacky. I think it's kind of fine as is, so we'll go with this. Perhaps we could also do this, that, some of this, and then find a way to continue this on, perhaps? Like this? Oh, okay, I think I know. Like, there, and there. And then we'll see whether or not we want to have it like this, or have it with the pyramid. That's kind of what I like to do. Check to see which looks better, the pyramid or the corner. And I think in that case, the corner looks a little bit better. So there we are. It adds a little bit more armor, as well as adding some more visual flair to it. Additionally, what we could have done is indent it further, but that's kind of what you want to do if you're lowering your CPU and you want to make a less bulky build. I'm kind of opting for something that's a little bit on the beefy side. At least that's kind of how the build is going in that direction. That's another thing. I have a general idea of what I want, but you really don't know what you're going to end up with until you actually start building. Because I didn't really know how much CPU I would have until I got to this point. But anyways, let's go ahead and finally work on the back of this vehicle. Alright, so we're really coming along here. As you can see, pretty beefy looking in the back, but that is kind of for protection. Think of it like you have the big engine in the back here and the weapons on the side. And then you've got your sort of lighter cockpit in the front. I guess that would cause some balance issues, but remember, we have our counterbalance down here. Again though, this is for, like, what if this mech was real kind of thing. Obviously, those mechanics are not implemented into Robocraft. It's just sort of for fun. At least, I think it's fun, anyway. Again, this is how I build my robots. You might have a different method. The last thing I do want to touch on, as far as this build goes, is flat space. Once more, we come back to flat space. So underneath here is a little bit of a problem, and kind of at the front too. So I'm going to touch this up, and then we will come back and go back into painting. I think that's the last thing we really need to cover here. Alright, so it's looking a little bit too blocky for my taste, so I think I will go and put it like this, and then put maybe that like that. Yeah, I think that's looking good, but of course, put that there. Just because I've kind of gone with that style. Although, this and that kind of clashing, so yeah, let's just do that. So there we go, and for theming purposes, I've kept this open so it can rotate around. It's not going to clip anything. It might clip here, but that would just be sort of the built-in maximum turning radius this thing has. Of course, if you're playing Mech Warrior or something similar, you know that certain mechs have a maximum turn radius to them. Looking pretty good, but finally I think we do need to come up here and touch this up slightly. Not sure how I can do that though. Could get that there and this here. Not sure how that's gonna look. Actually that's not bad. I kinda like that. It also adds a bit of armoring for the rotating platform, as it is kind of exposed. But yeah, here we are for our weird whatever this is. I'm not entirely sure if it's done just yet, but let's go into practice mode and see what happens. Alright, this is looking pretty solid. Definitely enjoying the looks of this thing. You can see you've got your hover fans in there. You can kind of see the other one below if you look carefully. And then you've got your power booster as well. All in all, I'd say this is looking to be a pretty good build. All we have to do now is go back into the garage bay and color this thing up. Maybe add some lasers, but I don't know, we'll see. Alright, so what is quite possibly the toughest part of the build is actually choosing what color you want to paint this thing. And it goes more difficult as time goes on, at least for me. You don't want to kind of double up on paint schemes you already have. So we could go with a nice orange color. That's actually not too bad. Actually, I'm actually kind of digging that, to be honest. Let's see what else we can do. You just kind of have to scroll through and see what happens. Now there's always black. Black is kind of overdone, but man, does it look good. Red. I don't really have too many red mechs, for good reason. Yellow, also for good reason. Green, maybe. Now, again, we'll get into this a little bit later once we actually pick the color, but you don't want to have one solid color, usually. You want to try and mix things up. Brown, kind of a brown beige already. Dark green? No, I'm kind of digging that orange, to be quite frank. And I don't really have that many orange mechs. So, here we are with the orange. Now, we've got our entire mech painted, so let's go back and do the highlights that we need to. So back to here, we have to color this back in, our little false rotating platform. There we are. And now, normally, I go with brown for all my cockpits. Though, this, as you can clearly see, is a slight problem, because there's not much visual difference here. If I don't do brown, normally I go with a nice light blue. Not sure if that's going to fit too well, so let's see if a dark blue would suit this thing better. Yeah, actually, I think that doesn't look too bad. I don't, we'll come back to it after we pick our secondary color. What exactly is going to be our secondary color? Well, that's also the toughest part of this. What do you want to do for your second color? Could go with we could go with a blue. Or we could go with a red. So what I like to do is pick a nice spot on your robot that you think you want to have a secondary color, and just kind of switch between all the colors you have. And if you don't find something, then go back to your primary and change that. So we will go ahead and pick what color we want. Honestly, I'm kind of digging the sage color. I don't know, something about it just kind of stands out to me. So I think we will actually continue that pattern along to there. Nice little green side accents there. And you don't necessarily have to stop at one color set. You can go with as many color sets as you want, but at a certain point you don't want to add too many. You don't want to kind of overdo it, I guess. That's not looking too bad there. And the other thing that I do like to do is, it's kind of difficult to describe, but you see this here and that there, so it's kind of like a full face, and it kind of wraps around underneath, like so. But then this part sticks out, and because it's sticking out, it can be its own color. I guess that's a decent way of describing how to do it, but how can I describe this better? Okay, so another example here would be to grab one of these, pick a block with color, and put that there. See, now this is exposed, so we would then take this and now fill that underneath. Honestly, I kind of like that block placement better anyways. So yeah, there we go with that connection there. I think that's looking pretty damn solid. Now what else can we do up top here? We can sort of add accents like this along the top. Perhaps that's a bit too close. On second thought though, no, actually that's pretty solid. I'd say that's good. Let's go with here and here. That is a lot of green all in one area. So with your secondary color, you don't want it kind of overpowering your primary color. At least that's how I like to build. So what I do as a sort of different method of adding different color is adding some more gray to it. Some exposed metal, I guess we can say. So have that like that. Looks pretty nice. And then under here, we can also do the same as well. Although we could actually go with the secondary, which I think is actually a better idea. Yeah, let's go with the secondary there and have that like so. And again, going back to that other rule, put that in like there. I could additionally go with that, but that also breaks my other rule of having that connecting to there, and that's too much of one secondary color, so let's stick with that. Another way we could do that is have that go out like there and along the side, but I think honestly having it come down is a little bit better. We could go with that. No, that's too much of that, so let's just stick with that. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and paint up the rest of this thing because I think you get the gist of it. But if there is anything I feel I need to talk about, then I will do so. Alright, so here is the finished upper portion of the robot. As you saw there, I kind of fiddled around with this because I'm not entirely sure as to whether or not I like it or not. I might add that, but no. Yeah, I don't know. I could just have this continuing as gray, and that as green? No. Then, yeah, let's go with that. Man, decisions. It's always tough painting your robot, at least I find. But anyways, there is the upper half of the torso, and now I will continue along with the bottom half. Alright, so now that we have our build painted and, well, obviously constructed, we have to come up with some way of adding more weapons onto this thing, because I honestly don't think these are going to be enough. Just because they are so big, they can be easily taken off, and you only have one of each, so it's going to be very disorienting as soon as you lose one. But what is always nice is having a large amount of backup weapons. Usually lasers. So you don't want to have the biggest lasers if it's going to be, if it's not rather going to be your primary. So I could go with the blaster, or I could go with the Hornet. Either one wouldn't be too bad, and I think we actually do have a decent amount of room here. Plus we also have the... seeing if we couldn't actually get them any lower. We also do have the power booster, so we could take advantage of that, but do we really want to take advantage of that with our lasers? So let's do a quick little test and see how much energy these things are actually going to chew up. So switching over to 4, let's take a look. That's really not a huge amount. And usually you kind of want to be at mid-range, and you've used up all of your rail shots. So let's use up that. Use up the power, and then fire away. So we still have some decent fire rate, even with a really low amount. I think this might be a pretty solid thing here. So as you can see there, we can do some nice crazy jumps with our internal hovers. As you can kind of just like stop on a dime and then turn around. It takes some getting used to, but it is very, very handy to have. Anyways, honestly, I would say this build is pretty much good to go. I'm not entirely sure what else it needs. It's got the hovers, it's got the module, it's got the primary weapons, and it's got the backup weapons. So, what we could also do is lower them, but again, make sure you're testing it out. Find out which weapon works best for you. So, there we are. And last but not least, what I do generally like to do is color these things based on what they are actually sitting on. So those are based on the steel color, so they will stay steel. These are based on the green paint, so they will be painted green. Additionally, what you could do if you really wanted to is make that fill cube and sort of fiddle around with the connection points so they make a bit more sense. Or you could just keep them the way they are. And honestly, I think I'll just be doing that. I don't want to fiddle around too much. And finally, this thing needs a name. That's always another really tough thing. If you guys have any suggestions for what to name this thing, leave them down in the comment section below. And then once I actually have this thing named, I'll stick it up on the shop for you guys to download. And with that, guys, I will go ahead and end the video here. I, of course, have been the Awesome Soul. I thank you all so very much for watching. Hopefully you learned something today, and if you have learned something, maybe talk about it in the comment section down below. But yes, I will see you next time. Take care.